Rwandan and Mozambican army forces say they've taken control of the key northern port of Mocimboa da Praia. Insurgents had been using the port as headquarters in their fight against the government there. Let's talk more about this with Chris Maruleng, Executive Director at Good Governance Africa. Chris, afternoon. Always good to have you on. So, is what we're hearing from the Mozambicans and the Rwandans the first sign that they finally are defeating the insurgency?
It certainly is a good sign, a symbolic sign that progress is being made in curbing the activities of the insurgents. As you would be aware, the port city of Mocimboa da Praia was under the control of these insurgents for over a year now. And certainly this step in seizing this key area really marks a key period that is quite symbolic, indicating that good progress is now being made, Tembegile.
Interesting, though, because in reading some of the analysis from security experts and other journalists familiar with what's been happening in northern Mozambique, one of them said that the situation suggests that the real test for the government will be in securing the areas that it's going to, quote-unquote, liberate post, for example, the departure of the Rwandans.
Yeah, certainly. I think the significance of the capture of Mocimboa da Praia is really because this really is an area that has a large number of strategic infrastructure points around the oil and gas developments that we've seen up there in northern Cabo Delgado. But what is more significant is that the real bases that we know that the insurgents operate from are further north towards Palma. And this indicates that the expansion of the security ring that this intervention force led by the Mozambican government needs to engage in will have to really gradually extend its presence to ensure that their footprint is able to curb the activities of the insurgents. However, this is just part of it, because it is not just a military option that is required in order to really bring peace and stability to this region. We argue at Good Governance Africa that what is required is a much more extensive expansion of the role of governance by the Mozambican administration in order to ensure that the grievances of the people up north who feel excluded from development, who feel excluded from economic opportunity, are extended all the way up north.
So two things based on what you're saying. I want us to go into what, excuse me, the expansion would look like, and B, whether the Mozambican government is showing any signs that it wants to move in that direction where there are indeed legitimate economic grievances which may actually further down the line lead to further conflict, even if it's with a different group, for example.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, but I think what is significant about today in particular, and I think really yesterday, saw the arrival of President Masisi of Botswana as the chair of the Southern African Development Community to basically launch officially the presence of the Southern African Development Community's peacekeeping or intervention force in Mozambique. And this is quite significant because the capture of Mocimboa da Praia was really done by the Rwandan forces together jointly with their Mozambican counterparts. Now, the presence of the Southern African Development Community's peacekeeping force will also see this force being able to bolster activity in expanding this security zone that is being established up north. But as I indicated to you, Tembegile, I think the military option is not the only way and the only means by which we can stabilize and see a more peaceful future for this region of Mozambique. What will be required is significant efforts towards ensuring that development and stability is brought to this area.
There's also been a lot of criticism since the arrival of the Rwandans in July, people saying we're not hearing enough transparency as far as the government forces who may either have been injured or killed in the fighting. We're also not getting a lot of information, people are saying, about whether any civilians have been harmed.
Well, we can always ask for more communication, especially coming from the Mozambican government itself and the Mozambican Defense Forces. However, what has been quite interesting in the past few days has been to see that this narrative and communication has really been coming from the Rwandan forces and not the Mozambican administration, maybe indicating to us that the Rwandans are trying to project a sense of control, that they are in actual fact doing most of this activity. And certainly since their arrival, we've seen significant activity. In actual fact, as they arrived, we saw clashes, including the Rwandans in joint operations with their Mozambican counterparts to secure this key area between, well, that leads up to Mueda, which is the district stronghold of the military in Mozambique. And certainly this fighting is an indication that the Mozambicans and their presence there is really aimed at ensuring that key infrastructure is restored. However, having said so, the question that we're looking at is whether the peacekeeping operations there and the Rwandan forces will be able to maintain these gains that they have made in recent times.
Interesting that you make the point about the Rwandans almost wanting to get ahead of the PR machinery, if you will, and projecting strength. It would go in direct contradiction of what was said at their deployment, because the idea then, what was said officially by the Mozambicans, is that the Rwandan forces, all 1,000 of them, would almost be one step behind the Mozambicans, allowing them to lead because this is their territory.
Yeah, indeed. It's quite interesting at this stage to see, simply from the communication that we're receiving from Cabo Delgado, especially around the operations of the Rwandans, that it does appear that the tempo and indeed the operations are being controlled to a certain extent. At least the narrative is being controlled by the Rwandans. However, it is the presence of the Rwandans, we must admit, that have really realized these gains, even the resecuring of Mocimboa da Praia that we're just talking about, this port city. And the argument is being made that had it not been for the presence of the Rwandans, that we would not have seen these military gains. In actual fact, this conflict has been going on for the past 4 years. And the Mozambican government, together with its army, have been unable to really control and create a safe sanitary cordon where insurgents are basically repelled. However, the next steps, as if we can call it that, in terms of the operations, should see the Rwandan forces, hopefully the Southern African Development Intervention Force, also broadening and expanding the security zone to areas outside and beyond the Palma area, which is the northern city close to Mocimboa da Praia, to ensure that these areas are safe for civilians and that the insurgents and the dominance that they've enjoyed over the past 3 or 4 years in this area is minimized. So the signs are good that the military intervention seems to be working in repelling these military elements or these insurgent elements. However, what is concerning is that we could be witnessing also a similar process where the insurgents begin to engage in a more asymmetrical approach, where they blend into civilian communities, making it harder for the intervention force, the Rwandans also, to identify and to interdict them as easily as they have done at this current stage. So I think more work is still to be done to ensure that peace and stability is restored to these regions in northern Mozambique.
Chris, good to chat to you. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Chris Maroling is Executive Director at Good Governance Africa, speaking to us about the latest developments in Mozambique. Still to